Hey, welcome back to We Be Kids again. If this is your first time at We Be Kids, know there are over 150 free videos and activities and stories and all kinds of things for you and your family to do to improve your well-being. You can find them all over our website at webekids.net. My name's Danny and I'm one of the founders at We Be Kids, and I'm an outdoor educator and a storyteller. So today I've come up to the woods to tell you a story. This story is a very, very old English folk tale, and it is called The Three Sillies. Now, this story happened off in a big stone farmhouse. And in the farmhouse lived the farmer and his wife and his daughter. And his daughter had recently been courting with another farmer's son from the neighbouring farm. And on this night, the farmer's son had come home for dinner. And in the farm kitchen, sat around a big table, was the farmer and his wife and his daughter and the neighbouring farmer's son. And they were all tucking into a great big dinner. When the farmer said to his daughter, can you head down into the cellar, fill up this jug with beer for us? She said, yeah, of course, Dad. And she took the jug and she went down the wooden steps and into the cellar. And there, when she got into the cellar, was a big barrel of beer with a tap on the bottom. And she put the jug underneath and she turned the tap, and the jug began to fill. And while she was waiting for the jug to fill, she began to look around. And then she noticed up above her, in the roof, in one of the big wooden beams, there was an axe that was stuck there. And she looked at it, and her mind began to turn over. She thought to herself, well, imagine if I marry the farmer's son upstairs and we move into the farmhouse and we have children. One of those children come down here and the axe falls out and hits them on the head and kills them. And as she thought it, tears began to roll down her face. And she sat down and she began to sob and cry. And as she was sobbing and crying, the jug began to fall over with beer. Now upstairs in the kitchen, the other three were wondering what was going on and why it was taking her so long. So the farmer's wife said, don't worry, I'll go down and I'll check on her. So the farmer's wife went down the stairs, and there in the bottom of the cellar she saw her, sat down on the stone floor, covered in beer with tears rolling down her face. She said, oh my dear, what is the matter? And the farmer's daughter pointed at the axe. She said, look at that axe, mother. I came down here and I saw that axe and it got me thinking, what if I married the farmer's son? And we had children and moved in here and one of the children came down and the axe fell and hit them on their head and killed them. What then? Wouldn't that be a terrible thing? And the mother started to well up as well. And before you knew it, great tears were pouring down her face. She sat on the floor in the beer with her daughter and together they sobbed and sobbed at the thought of such a terrible thing. And up in the kitchen, the farmer and the farmer's son from the neighbouring farmer started to wonder what was going on. Why was it taking so long to fill a jug of beer? So the farmer said, don't worry, I'll go and I'll have a look for them and I'll find them. So he went down the cellar steps, and there he found his daughter and his wife on the floor with beer all around them and great big tears streaming down their face. He said, ladies, whatever is the matter? And his wife said, well, I came down and she was here with beer and tears rolling down her face because she'd seen the axe up there. And she thought, imagine if she married the farmer's son and they moved in and had children and one of the children came down and the axe fell out and hit them on the head and killed them, and what a terrible thing that would be. The farmer thought about it for a moment, and then great big tears started rolling down his face too, and he sat down in the beer with them and together they sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And up in the kitchen, the farmer's son thought, whatever is going on? So he went down the cellar steps to have a look, and when he got there, he saw the farmer's daughter, the farmer's wife, and the farmer sat in a puddle of beer with great big tears rolling down their faces. He said, "Whatever is the matter?" The farmer said, "Well, I came down and my wife said to me that she'd seen this axe, and then she said, imagine if you got married to our daughter and you moved in and you had children and they came down here and the axe fell down and hit them on their head and killed them, and what a terrible thing that would be." And the farmer's son looked at the three of them. He stepped up onto the table where the barrel was. He reached up and he pulled the axe out of the roof and he leant it up against the side. He said, "Well, now that's never going to happen." He said, "I have never seen any people as silly as the three of you. Why didn't you just pull it out?" He said, "I tell you what, I'm getting out of here." He said, "But if I ever meet three people as silly as you three, then I'll come back and I'll marry your daughter." And with that, he turned and he went up the cellar steps and out of the farmhouse door, and he was gone. And as he went, he walked through different towns and through different villages, and he spent nights sleeping under oak trees, spent days drinking from streams, and occasionally he sat under a campfire and watched the stars. And then one day he was walking through a village when he saw this small house. And around the house was a garden, and in the garden there was a cow. And by the house there was an elderly lady. And this elderly lady had a ladder, and she was resting the ladder up against the roof of the house. And then she went over and she tied something around the cow's neck and around her wrist, and she started moving the cow over to the ladder. And then she stood behind the cow and she started pushing the cow, trying to get the cow to climb up the ladder onto the roof. And the farmer's son went over. He said, "Excuse me, can I ask what you're doing?" She said, "Yes. I've noticed I've got some grass growing on the roof. So I'm trying to get my cow up the ladder onto the roof to eat the grass." And the farmers looked at her. He said, "Are you sure that's a good idea?" She said, "Yeah, of course it's a good idea. The cow eats the grass all around my garden every day. Now I've got some on the roof, I need to get it up there." He said, "Yeah, but it's not easy to get a cow up a ladder." She said, "Yeah, but don't worry, I've thought about that. You see, if I stand behind it and push, then it'll go up in no time." He said, "Yeah, but what if it falls off?" She said, "Oh, I've thought about that too." She said, "See that string around its neck? Well, that has gone up through the chimney and down, and I've tied it around my wrist, so that if it falls off, I'll know and I'll be able to come out and help it." He thought, "I've never seen anything as silly as this since I saw the three down in the farmyard cellar." He said, "Okay." So the lady pushed and pushed and pushed, and eventually the cow was up on the roof. And she gave the man a little smile and she headed inside. And the farmer's son shook his head and he walked out and he closed the gate behind him. But as he closed the gate, it shocked the cow and the cow fell. It tumbled off the roof, and as it tumbled off the roof, the string that was around its neck pulled on the lady inside, and she shot up the chimney and got stuck. And the farmer's son shook his head. He said, "Well, there's one silly Billy." And off he went. And he walked for another couple of days. And then he realised that he was getting tired. And he wanted to spend the night in a hotel. So as he walked, he came across a hotel and he went in and he said, "Have you got any rooms for me?" And they said, "We've only got one room left and it's got 2 beds in it, but somebody's already sleeping in it. Do you mind sharing?" He said, No, I don't mind sharing at all." So they booked him in and he went up there, and in the room there was another man. And they got chatting and they went and they had some dinner and they had a couple of drinks, and then as it got night time, they went up and they went to sleep. And in the morning, the farmer's son was woken to the biggest racket he'd ever heard. He pulled his head over the cover and he looked around, and there he saw the other man with his trousers hung on the 2 knobs of the chest of drawers. and he was running across the room and jumping and trying to land in his trousers. He tried it time and time again. The farmer's son said, "What are you doing?" And the man said, "Well, I have this trouble every morning. It takes me till about lunchtime to put my trousers on." He said, "I've never come across a worse invention. Why did they make them like this?" The farmer's son said, "Like what?" He said, "It's where you have to get in them like that. Well, you have to hang them up and jump into them." The farmer's son said, "Are you silly? You don't have to do it like that. Let me show you." And he got out and he took the trousers and he showed the other man how to put them on, one leg at a time, and then tied the buckle. The man was so surprised. He said, "Thank you so much. Now that's going to save me so much time every single day." And with that, he headed out the door. And the farmer's son shook his head. He thought, "I've never seen anybody so silly since I saw the lady putting the cow on the roof." And he packed his things up and he headed out. And he walked throughout the day. It was a lovely day. And as he walked and the sun came down and it became night time, he headed into a village. And there in the middle of the village was a great big pond. And he noticed a man around the edge of the pond with a rake. And he was throwing the rake into the pond and then pulling it out. And throwing the rake in and pulling it out. So the farmer's son went over. He said, "Can I ask what you're doing?" And the man said, "Yes, can you not see? The moon's fallen into the pond. I'm trying to get it out." And the farmer's son looked up in the sky and he could see the moon. And he looked at the pond and he could see the reflection of the pond. But the man continued to throw his rake in and pull it out and throw it in and pull it out. The man said, "Are you silly?" He said, "The moon hasn't fallen into the pond. The moon's up there in the sky, look. That's its reflection." And the man looked at the farmer's son with great menace in his eyes. He said, "Who do you think you are, coming into my village telling me that I'm silly? Get out of here!" And he chased him out of town with the rake. And as the man was running away, he remembered his promise to the farmer and the farmer's wife and the farmer's daughter. He'd said to them, "If I ever find 3 people as silly as you, I'll return and marry the farmer's daughter." And now, with the lady putting the cow on the roof, the man jumping into his trousers, and the other man trying to rake out the reflection of the moon, he'd found his 3 sillies. And with that, he ran all the way back. He married the farmer's daughter, and they all lived happily ever after. And that's the story of the 3 sillies. It's a funny little story, that. Some stories are just purely for entertainment, and I think that is one of those tales. So I hope it brought a smile to your face in the same way it did to me. Have a lovely day, and we'll see you again soon at We Be Kids. Bye.